times better cleaning than other cleaning products.
And great savings too.
And welcome back to Jeff Kanange Live here at Citizen Television. It's going to be a great show today. We're talking to some youthful legislators and, yes, the future of Kenya, sitting right here on this bench. That's what we're going to focus on. Aspiring senators, actually. ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna is an aspiring senator in Nairobi County. Yes. And M. Gwen, Member of Parliament Alex Koskei, also has declared his intention for the Nandi County senatorial seat. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Thank you so much. Can we start with hate speech, gentlemen? Let's get right to it. Okay. Hate speech. Secretary General, is it perceived or is it real in Kenya?
I think it's very real because you can always tell from the consequences. For the people who have suffered the consequences of, hate speech, it's very real. For the people who we buried in the Rift Valley during the 2007 post-election violence, it's very real. For the people who are displaced, the people who lost their property, the people who are maimed, it is very, very real. And because the words that come out of political leaders' mouths have an effect on the people. And it is very easy, especially in a charged political environment like presidential contest that we're going into in 2022. One word can ignite, passions and it can spiral out of control. Sometimes it starts off as something that is quite innocent, something that is might seem innocuous and something that maybe you said off the cuff, but the consequences of your words could be something that is quite terrible. So what has been most disappointing, and this has been expressed by many people, is that there hasn't really been, proper legal accountability. By legal accountability, I mean there hasn't been any legal consequence to the people who are, in my words, poster children for, hate speech. There are people who have said the most direct things that they are not even subject to interpretation. When somebody says, I'm giving you these pangas and they're not for slashing grass, use it on people. I mean, many people would assume that that would be an open and shut case, but the most disappointing thing is that we have not seen convictions coming out of, some of these utterances. I was reading a report, I think, only, is it one? Conviction in matters of hate speech that has come out from the prosecutions at the NCIC. So it is something real. We must always warn ourselves about the potential to divide the country from the words that we speak. And as political leaders, when we even go out for rallies, these days it has become customary that we remind ourselves about the things that we can talk about and the things that are no-go zones.
Mheshimiwa, do you agree?
Yes, of course, I completely agree. Hate speech is definitely real. We have seen it in the past. What happened in 2007, 2008 had really real consequences for people across the country, more so in the area where I come from, in around Eldoret and the environment. People were really affected. So it's unfortunate as we approach this election, when you see some people who still want to go back to those kind of comments. I think all of us as leaders should be responsible in what we say and be a bit measured, and hopefully we can try and avoid one of the things that happened in the past.
Yeah, it's fine what you say, but on the ground, a lot of people listen to you. A lot of people watch this show, for instance. What do you tell your people on the ground? What do you tell people who want to vote for you when it comes to hate speech, when it comes to people they lived with all their lives or for generations, and suddenly they become the enemy?
Okay, I mean, us as leaders, as I said, we have to be measured, we have to be responsible, in which I think a lot of us are. In fact, the people who seem to make some of the terrible utterances are actually just a very small percentage of the people who are actually out there talking. Most leaders do try and measure their words and try and avoid inflammatory speeches. However, I agree with the Secretary General over here that what we would need is also those in charge and authority to at least take more concrete measures, because there have been no convictions, there have been no serious measures happen after the initial arrest and arraigning before record a statement. But beyond that, we would hope to see some concrete action so that hopefully people are deterred from doing it in future.
Absolutely. SG, I mean, at the end of the day, there's some people who may say, you know what, this is eating into our freedom of expression.
No, I think there is a very clear demarcation of the boundaries of freedom of expression under the Constitution, that in fact it ousts advocacy for war, hate speech and all the others. That is a realm that the freedom of speech does not extend to. Part of the frustration that we have seen, and I speak from the perspective of ODM or the opposition generally, is that there seems to be some sort of pressure to only prosecute hate speech cases when you can prosecute people from both sides of the divide. That if Sifuna misbehaves today, they cannot just prosecute me because there will be noise at all. Munatuonea sisi, ama you are only focusing on our side, and they will wait for somebody else from the other side to misbehave. At least that has been my experience, that if they cannot arraign two people together. It has happened in previous matters that you will hear somebody say something very outrageous, but that if there is nobody from the other side so that they can be arraigned together, so that we can be seen that we are doing, I think something wrong should just be viewed from the prism of right and wrong. And it doesn't really matter whether there are other people that can accompany you when you're going to take plea. You should be able to take plea immediately. So we have cases and cases, and I know that sometimes it's difficult to talk about these things because we are, nobody is perfect. I myself have found myself on the wrong end of the law once, although it was not particularly something that was criminal. But I went to the NCIC, had a very good conversation with Reverend Kobia, who advised me as a father. In fact, for me, he told me that what they had called me for was that they were disappointed. In his own words, there are some bad manners in generations of older generations of politicians that they would not like to see our generation, inherit or continue. That in fact there are good things we can learn from the older politicians, but there are some things that just for the sake of this country and its future, there is hope that we can leave some of these things behind. So when I spoke to Reverend Kobia, his biggest pain was that he was disappointed in us. He said, Sifuna, your name should not be brought up amongst some of his names. And they let me go because it did not reach the threshold of criminality. But I also understood why people would be disappointed in me as Sifuna being or appearing to be tending towards those bad manners. Because apparently people have some hope in us as the next generation of political leaders.
By the way, how old are you?
I'm turning 40 in May.
Congratulations.
I'm amused that he's talking of ODM as the opposition. In fact, I wanted to challenge that, and I thought I should just let him finish because it's shocking. These people are government. There's nothing more government than them.
Go on.
Government is not something that you assign. It is something that is assigned at the poll by the people of.
So, are you government?
I am not government. If I was government, you would know it. You would see it. And
we do see it. We do see it in their rallies. We do see security. We do see them being escorted with government machinery. So we definitely see that this is government.
You see, the beauty is that I came here with my car. We will walk outside after this show and you can show me the security that Sifuna has. Because if government has assigned the SG of ODM any security, you would see it. It's not something you can hide. So we have fought these claims from the time that the handshake happened. I can guarantee you, my friend, if ODM was a government party, you would probably be speaking to a cabinet secretary, Sifuna. None of the people in ODM sit in cabinet. Your party leader is still the deputy president of the republic. He's the one who sits in those cabinet meetings. There is not a single ODM appointee in cabinet. And they like to throw this thing to us so that they escape responsibility. There's a responsibility that the Kenyan people gave to the current government at the election. If you are unable to do the job, please don't scapegoat. Just accept that you have been unable to do the job. And as Baba said, get out of the way. In 2022, we show you how this thing is done.
Mahesh, you have to respond to this, huh?
Look, it is extremely clear that there is a preferred individual who the state machinery is working towards, and that is definitely Baba, as he's just mentioned. And so, when we look at everything that is being done, clearly it is in one direction. So I would politely refuse to agree with what you have said. And going back to what you were mentioning earlier about hate speech, the other unfortunate thing also is the rhetoric. Recently in Parliament, when we passed the Political Amendments Act, you saw the kind of scenes that were there. Very chaotic, very violent, very confrontational. Personally, I thought, and I still think, that it's an extremely bad idea to try and change the rules of an election during the year of that election. And it was very unfortunate, I think ill-advised, to try and bring amendments to the election law, knowing full well that you have an election less than 1 year away. And that is what caused that kind of friction, that kind of tension. And moving forward, I would hope that them, because they are indeed in government, they're the ones setting the agenda for some of these things. I would hope that they would try and avoid doing things that are inflammatory. After all, they have said many times that they would like, through the handshake, to bring Kenyans together. And there is no better way to bring Kenyans together than trying to avoid things that are divisive and inflammatory, like what happened in Parliament. It was so simple to call MPs and say, let's try and have a consensus on this issue. However, their attitude was not to have a consensus. It was to say, we will try and find a way, come what may, and force this agenda through and get it passed even at Christmas, regardless of anything. And okay, yes, it happened, but at what cost? Because the cost is to create that level of animosity, which is what we are trying to avoid. We would like to have a peaceful election as we move forward, and we would like to avoid inflaming the situation.
You know, SG, Mheshimiwa mentions the political parties bill, right?
Yeah.
So on that note, how will it affect you? How does it affect you?
You know, it's he's the MP here. I have not gotten to Bunge, so he knows that the legislative authority of the people of Kenya is vested in Parliament, and that bills ordinarily go through the process that this one went through, and that in fact in Parliament decisions are made by vote. I mean, it would be nice if we could all agree and sing Kumbaya and say, yeah, this is now the law. It would be nice. I don't dispute. But I'm saying that legislation, as it has happened before, is something that always, and decisions that are made in Parliament always come down to a vote. Now, you will recall that this is not the first time we're having amendments to electoral laws this close to the election. I am aware that there was recommendations, I think it was a Kriegler report, that in fact we should try and avoid amendments to the electoral laws towards the end of the parliamentary term. And this is a recommendation everybody is alive to. But the truth of the matter is, you are a member of Parliament. You are free to bring any bill.
But that is why we opposed it.
Let me finish. You are free to bring any bill to the Parliament and let it be debated robustly by your colleagues. And if it is an idea that they, side with, they will support you. But you are one of those who, in fact, if you Google his name, he is the top of the list of MPs who never speak. In fact,
hold on.
More.
That is unfortunate, actually, that you're trying. I think you should address the topic, because the point...
Go on,
just a minute.
No, because the...
Give me time to rebuttal.
Yes, the point is, let's not get into personal attacks.
No,
the point is, as a principle, you accept that changing the election law in an election year has been advised against, even by the Kriegler report, which was trying to advise us on how to avoid future post-election problems. And if we accept that already has been put on record, why on earth would those in charge who are setting the agenda, and you are in the party which was actually pushing for those amendments, so you cannot run away from that, even though you're not in Parliament. You are in the party that you would talk for them. Now, why on earth would you then push this kind of law, knowing full well, and you say that you do know that this was in the Kriegler report, so it's not as if you're ignorant, you do know the situation, yet despite knowing that, you do this, which what we said was that at that time, when you were bringing the thing, it was ill-advised, and I would have hoped it's not have been done. It is akin to if you're having a football match, you wake up, just before the referee is about to start the match, somebody comes up with a new story and saying, this time we'll play the match like this instead of like that. It's not a really good practice, it's not the way people should do things, and it's unfortunate it has happened. What we just hope is that we move forward. As we move forward, we try and avoid doing things that can inflame people, and try and see how we can create consensus.
Bringing a bill and a law before Parliament is not to create inflammation. I mean, it is something to be debated. It is a law.
You remember yourself that
it is in the Kriegler report. I am aware of that report and the recommendations that were made there because of the difficulties in implementing some of the recommendations or the laws that are passed, down the road when we're close to the election. The IEBC has protested this, that it probably needs to change things, their timetable and so on and so forth, even us as political parties. But we see positives in some of the proposals in the laws to deal with the question of party primaries, for instance. We have had a problem with political parties using registers, for instance, or people who are not members of those political parties participating in the primaries and causing all sorts of problems. We now have some level of clarity in these new amendments. The proposal that I think brought the greatest hit was a proposal to allow for these coalition parties that then are able to run candidates on their own. But I don't see how that affects anyone, in any significant way. We have had coalitions before in 2017. We were in the NASA coalition. The only difference was we could not run Raila Odinga as a presidential candidate for NASA, and he was on the ballot as the presidential candidate for ODM. What difference? What is this heat that is bringing? The only problem that they are upset is that they lost, because they have been touting these parliamentary numbers and strength. Every time we see a meeting at Karen, we are told we have 170 members of the National Assembly. And when the rubber meets the road, Jeff...
No, look, on that particular day in Parliament,
they say we are creating...
despite a lot of intimidation and despite having all of the other leaders on one side who are essentially what Raila is, I don't even know what the Azimio la Umoja coalition on one side, that whole group were just about all the numbers that they could muster to try and pass the bill. It was by a tiny fraction. So on our side, we do have the numbers. You can actually see when you look at the results that there is actually a very strong side on our side. And it is not just the numbers for, as I said, for just purposes of creating tension, but it's for purpose of trying to move the country forward in a positive way, which is what we all want to try and see.
Mahesh, let me ask you, how does a political parties amendment bill, how does that affect you?
Well, it doesn't really, on a personal level, it doesn't affect...
As a party?
As a party, it's not that... One of the things that we do not want as a party is that we do not want to have further regulation in the management and the running of political parties, because we think that the law at the moment gave the political parties an ability to engage and to regulate themselves. Having this law has put a lot of powers to the registrar, which I do not think is helpful. It actually even allows them the ability to regulate the kind of slogans, the kind of speech, the kind of things that they can say, which again, I don't think it is healthy for a democracy. I think it is better if a democracy is allowed to have the parties regulate themselves, to say what they would like to say. And if indeed anything goes against the law, then there are other institutions that can take care of it. But having the registrar of political parties regulate everything, and then also when it comes to the issue of the coalitions trying to change the rules at the end of just a few months to the election, again, that I did not think was a good idea. So those are the kind of things which I feel we could have avoided having. And at least even if we did really need to have it in the law, I think it would have been fairer to have a consensus and bring people together and see if we can agree on something which becomes now a level playing field for everybody.
SG, you've been Secretary General for how long now?
I think this is the 5th year, because I took over in 2018. It should be the 5th year. We're into the 5th year. Yes.
So, and you've decided now you're going to try your hand. You're going to jump in there yourself.
No, I actually ran in 2017, as you know. I ran for Senate in Nairobi.
Correct.
Against Sakaja from Jubilee. And I did very well. In fact, I'm very proud of the run that I had in 2017. And I feel like I should be able to give it another go. Because even as people prepare to, have this new government by Raila Odinga, people need to understand that government is not just the executive. It is beyond that. It is the judiciary, it is parliament as well. And there's going to be a lot of need for us to be able to put in place certain things that then help to drive the agenda of the executive.
You're going to run against Sakaja if he runs?
I'm going to run against whoever it is that is running.
You think you can win?
I'm actually running against myself. You cannot really determine who else will show up to run.
Okay, and you're ready to do all the ridiculous things that people do, like dance on stage and all that?
I don't think dancing is not ridiculous. Maybe if you have, 2 left feet. then it's a problem
Some
for you.
people say it.
But it's actually fun. I mean, if you look at campaigns in other places like in Tanzania, campaigns are a carnival. You have artists there and people perform and they dance and they have a good time. Interacting with people is something that we like to do. We actually enjoy ourselves there on the dais. So it is not painful for us. It is actually something that we enjoy doing, and I'm really looking forward to the campaign this time around.
Mahesh, is it expensive? I mean, it must be expensive to run for office, whether as an MP and now you're going for Senator of Nandi County. It must be expensive.
Well, I don't know. I don't really think. I don't think money is the issue, because I think a lot of people make a lot of their decisions based on other factors, whether they connect to the candidate, whether the candidate has been able to articulate what they would like to see done, and whether the candidate has been able to reach to where they are and explain to them what they would like to do. And I think in many cases that is actually what influences the decision of many voters, and not other factors.
Okay, let me put it in another way. Handouts are an everyday thing. Let's admit it. Campaigns are about handouts.
I think, Jeff, before you even come to handouts, campaigns in themselves are very expensive, because if you look at the logistics that are required, even just to fuel your car, to move around, to hire halls, to hire sound systems, to be able to even provide drinking water in the, to the people that you're having a meeting with, is very expensive. And we have had discussions even in these political parties about one of the greatest inhibitions for why, say, young people don't join politics is because of the expense, before you even come to the so-called handouts. Because, it is very, very expensive. I'll give you an example. I was having a conversation with one of these donor agencies, and I was telling them they support women in politics, for instance. And I told them, just do a breakdown of the initial cost that is required for somebody to be on the ballot at an election. So, for instance, at ODM, to be a life member of a party, you have to pay 20,000 shillings. And then there is a nomination fee. If you are a woman or a young person, it's maybe 150,000 shillings. Then when you are finally nominated by the political party, there is also some money that you pay at IBC. I think it's 100,000 shillings. So if you do the totality of that, it is a scary figure, especially for young people who want to get into this space.
What's a scary figure? Plus, minus?
I mean, even if you just start with that 300,000 shillings that you require as a minimum just to have your name on the ballot, if you're going through a political party, it is something that is prohibitive, especially to young people. So many of these organizations have come to understand that if you wanted to encourage young people, especially young women, to join politics, address some of those preliminary issues. So we are happy that at ODM we have partners who are willing. If they identify good female candidates who are running in single constituencies, they can remove that initial cost of the party nomination fees, the IBC nomination fees, and you will see the difference that it will make. Then you get into the campaigns proper. You have to be all over the place. If you are running in a county, there are some counties that are smaller than others. If you are running in a county like Marsabit, Wajir, or Kajiado here, it is a quite vast county. And if you have to meet all the people you need to meet, the expenses attendant there too are very, very high. Then, of course, you come to the question of handouts, that sometimes there are people who have entrenched this culture of handouts in politics such that the rest of us are dragged into that, If you make your campaigns about money, that every time people see Sifuna, they know he's carrying 2 million shillings for the youth, 1 million shillings for the Mamamboga, and it results in all sorts of problems. You have seen the problems that the deputy president has run into in Jacaranda, in Kondele. Then they come and say, oh, it's ODM. But people know that you're carrying money. They
are
going
the ones
to have
who
a
caused
problem.
that problem in Jacaranda.
Go on, Mahesh, you're saying?
Yeah, they are the ones who caused the problem in Jacaranda that he's just mentioning. I mean, it's really responsible for him to bring that in, because on that particular case, it was a case where some well-known youths came and disrupted a function of another leader, and that again is something which should be condemned. We should try and discourage it. Whenever anything has happened, where a situation where the former Prime Minister has toured or has gone to any area that is perceived as a stronghold of the Deputy President, the Deputy President has been on record to try and ask everybody to receive the former Prime Minister well and make sure that the function happens peacefully. When this case happened in Jacaranda, one would have hoped that leaders such as himself and also the former Prime Minister would have come out very clearly and unequivocally and condemn any kind of violence and say that they do not encourage that and tell their supporters that we cannot tolerate this. However, what has come from their end, it's been almost some kind of bemusement. In fact, I remember I heard one of them, I think it was one of these people said that it was the deputy president himself who organized his own stoning. I mean, that is ridiculous.
There is a reason.
No, some of these things are ridiculous. And what we just need to have is across the board to have leaders condemn violence of any kind and try and tell people that we shall not tolerate this. And like what happened in Jacaranda, especially because many of those people were the supporters of the former Prime Minister, you would have hoped that he and as also the Secretary General who is here to actually condemn it. And I would ask you, one SG,
yes,
right now. I mean, instead of responding with some amusement, I'm honestly telling you, the best thing is to look in the camera and just say that you condemn it unequivocally, regardless. Any kind of violence should be condemned.
You're not going to tell me what to do. I am laughing because I know the characters we are dealing with, Jeff. Let me ask you a question. Yesterday, the Deputy President was in Kibra. Kibra is our bedroom. What happened there? Nothing happened because he's going into a constituency to meet the people who are there. You know? He's moving, he went to DC grounds, he spoke to the people who are there. Why was he not stoned? Now, the difference with Jacaranda is that he's importing people from other places to come and attend his rally, and he's paying them. And these young people know. The problem in Jacaranda was that these young people were asking them, you are bringing people here, and we are here. And you are paying them to come. We also have stomachs. He went to Nyanza, for instance, and he toured the entire Nyanza and ran into problems only in Kondele. And then it becomes, oh, ODM must apologize. He was stoned in Nyeri, in Kieni. You didn't hear anybody in UDA asking any political party to apologize for the violence in Nyeri. Why is it that only ODM is always called out to apologize for the things that happen? First of all, they are the architects of their own misery. Because you walk around with cash, telling people that, oh, I'm going to give this X and Y and this. And in these places, I have been on the ground, and I'm sure he has been too. They are always different groups, so that if you sort out one group, you give them handouts to one group, you must sort out the other group. It is just the truth. If the Deputy President today condemned the culture of handouts and stopped carrying around money to his rallies, you will see these things just die down. So there is no explanation why you would be stoned in Jacaranda and not in Kibra. Why? What is the explanation? And then finally, there is nobody who walks around with a label or a number plate saying this is an ODM supporter or this is a Raila Odinga supporter. He says they are well known. Please, take this information to the police. Yesterday, the day before, we issued a statement and we said we welcome the investigations by the police. But just like the conclusion that was reached in Kondele, that in fact they are the ones who planned that stoning themselves, I can assure you, Jeff, the conclusion by the police about Jacaranda will be the same.
Mesh, I see you shaking your head vigorously.
No, I mean, I reiterate what I said. Violence of any kind should be condemned, and nobody should try and somehow make an excuse for it. It is akin to blaming a victim for being a victim of crime, and saying you should not have done that or you should not have gone this. Any crime committed, it's a mistake of the criminal, and the police should take action against that person who has committed the crime and not somehow blame the victim for saying that somehow it is your actions that caused you to become a victim. Violence should be condemned, and that's just my bottom line point over here, of any kind. And when it comes to issues of whether the DP wants to assist a certain group in this area or in that area, I mean, that is actually something which should be welcomed. There are so many things that he has done in different areas that have assisted people of all walks of life, and I do not see how you saying that because he went to this particular area with the intention of assisting these people, that therefore it is justified for him to become a victim of somehow some crime over there. It is not justified at all for him to become a victim simply because he was trying to assist somebody over there.
He's not the victim, he's the architect.
That is the most ridiculous argument ever. You cannot claim that somebody would go and tolerate and organize their own...
if I asked you a simple question, how did you know that those people at Jacaranda were Raila Odinga supporters? Do they have labels?
No, it's
do they have
okay.
Number plates?
Look, okay, Bwana SG,
no,
all I'm asking you,
how did you
assuming you think that whoever supported you may think, will you join me in condemning that violence?
I'm asking you.
No, but would you join me? No, but would you join me in condemning that violence, no matter who might have caused it?
If, for instance, I went to Eldoret and I was stoned, was that person a Ruto supporter?
No, my bottom line here, don't you want to join me in condemning the people?
I'm not joining you for anything. I want you to answer the question. Is it possible that if I'm stoned in Eldoret, that
Well, you see, this is why we sometimes say that when we look at the side from the ODM, that there is an element where they seem to use violence as part of their campaign tactics. That's why they're not so comfortable condemning it all the time. Because why don't you feel free to condemn it? Because this is one of those things which really, there should even be no argument or discussion. Jeff, honestly, how can you have an argument about condemning violence?
What we will condemn here, Jeff, is the fakery in UDA. And, you know, they had been in a bit of a sport in the past 2 weeks because of the Madoadoa comment. And they have been looking for a way in which they can drag everybody else so that they can divert attention from this Madoadoa thing. We have said very categorically, this Madoadoa Msalaba you will carry alone, because we were not there when you... And in fact, you people went and pretended to issue an apology.
Yes, it was issued and condemned.
Not an apology. I wish we had that document that Veronica Maina put out. That's not an apology. There's no contrition in the document. It's just saying, oh, other people also do this, other people also said this, we have not seen this, but they were explaining Linturi's words. That's not an apology. If you are just explaining what Jeff Koinange said, you are not apologizing. Even the deputy president, when he was speaking, I think it was in Bomet, what he was saying, he was reiterating what Linturi said and trying to explain to us what he meant. We know what the word Madoadoa means. We don't need to explain it to us.
But Mahesh,
so if you are contrite, you just...
Yes, we did apologize for it. We did actually say, okay, we did say that we apologize for it. We did condemn the remarks, and we did say that we welcome the agencies, investigative agencies, to take action on this matter. And we said all that we did say is that let them be fair and take action on any other matter that might also arise on both sides and be fair. And we did say that clearly. And look, that is on record. And if you, I know you want to shake your heads, but it is on record and it is there. And I'm sure even this station carried it, and it is there on record.
Yeah. Mheshimiwa, a moment ago, you were talking about the costs of running for an elective office, right?
Yes.
And this is what you were saying, and you both agree, it discourages a lot of the young people from seeking higher office.
Absolutely.
So the question is, does corruption follow politics? Because, you know, you have to make some money, get some money to get there. Once you get there, you have to pay back.
Yeah.
So corruption and politics, don't they run?
I think the world over in many democracies, the discussion around the corrupting influence of money is something that is, you know, it is acknowledged that there is a problem. Even in the US, the problem of lobbyists, having them around, hanging around senators and people who sponsor your campaigns and so on and so forth, that in fact, if you go against certain interests in parliament, if you are sponsored by some of the big agribusinesses and you even speak against you know, their interests, they simply get somebody to primary you or to challenge you at the primary level and to sponsor their, you know, your opponent. So even here, the demands in terms of cash, it attracts some to be able to look for quick money that is made easily. And Jeff, the truth of the matter is this. Some of the money that we see in campaigns and politics cannot actually be explained because, you know, you are in charge, for instance, you are in charge of two enterprises. A public enterprise, you are a president or a deputy president of a republic, and you also have your so-called private businesses. One enterprise is doing so badly that Kenyans are crying every day that the government is not working for them, people are poor, they don't have food, and so on and so forth. But you want to tell us that somehow your private enterprises, selling chicken or eggs or whatever it is else you're doing, is doing so well that you are able to give donations of up to 100 million shillings a month. Jeff, I can tell you, sometimes you are sent into a harambe, you have gone with what is truly in your pocket, 10,000 shillings. And there is a gentleman who has come with 10 million shillings. So when you give your donation, you just hear the entire church burst out in laughter because they look at you and they think you're a joker. There used to be times when, because the economy was doing well, the parishioners themselves used to build their own churches. There would be a doctor here, there would be a nurse here, there would be a farmer there. They give their, you know, a tenth, what is it called? Tithe. Yeah? And they build this building for God. But then there comes this one benevolent contributor who impoverishes everybody, that 90% of the church is unemployed, but he comes with the entire budget to build the entire church. If the budget was 10 million, he brings 9.5. My brother. Then we clap for him and say he's doing the Lord's job. And he's in public service, and you never get to ask, you know his salary. Surely.
Mahesh, the monetization of politics?
You know, just to respond to that briefly, yeah? I have always found it extraordinary how some people choose to make such accusations about other individuals without trying to substantiate it or actually put forward the evidence. They are investigative agencies in this country. There are many people who are charged. There is a there is an Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. There is the DCI. There are many agencies. If you feel that you have any evidence of any of these kind of activities that you think that there is a particular individual who has decided or who is engaging in something that you feel is improper, then everybody is free to forward this evidence elsewhere.
Like
but what you cannot, let me finish. But what you cannot do, and what is unfortunate, is to go out in the public and just taint somebody's name.
That's what you are doing with Jacaranda.
No, and repeatedly say things that you cannot back up with evidence. All you're doing is maligning somebody's name, creating some kind of negativity, which is not helpful again. Now, if somebody has done something and assisted in any kind of sphere in a community project, whether it be a building of a church, whether it be doing anything else, then that person should be commended. I do not see anything wrong with it. Now, if there is something that has happened that is wrong and there is evidence to it, then there are, as I said, there are agencies and there are people tasked with taking action against that. And these accusations have been held, I think, for the last nearly 10 years or longer. And you would wonder if there is any substance to these allegations. I mean, what actually stops people like Bana SG here and others going and forwarding this evidence to the appropriate authorities?
Now, this is exactly what I was asking of you with regards to Jacaranda. You go around throwing around allegations. When I ask you, have you taken evidence to the DCI about these people you say are right supporters?
My main issue of Jacaranda was condemning the violence.
Let me do this.
My main issue was condemning, and it's unfortunate you don't want to join me in condemning it, but my issue was condemning that violence.
You don't prescribe a medicine.
No, my medicine for violence is condemning. So, I've given you the medicine, you don't want to take it.
Jeff, there is
actually
two
different things here.
Yes, there is actually a law. There is actually a law, and as a lawmaker, you should know, on a recovery of unexplainable wealth. There was a story of that young lady who suddenly some 100 and something million showed up in her account. What happened in that instance? Immediately the thing was frozen, right? So it is because the agencies have the ability to tell that, Sifuna, we know how much money you make from the job that you do here and there. Even if we were to give you an allowance of 30%, there is no way 2 billion shillings shows up in my account, then I am unable to explain it. So the question is, you are a public officer whose salary is known. If you are spending 200 million shillings on donation in a month, and yet you earn 1.5 million shillings in a month, those investigative agencies should be able to do what? To take over.
And why haven't they?
That's the question. That is the question.
And the answer is?
And the answer is...
That's my answer is that there is no evidence about it.
No.
I mean, it's Occam's razor. It's the simplest answer. If you remove everything else, and without going to a very complicated solution, Occam's razor will tell you the simplest answer is often the truth, which is that there is no evidence. And that's the simplest answer here.
The question then I would ask...
Yes.
The question I would ask, Jeff, what evidence was there before this young lady's account was frozen? The money hit the account like this, Financial Reporting Center, this money has checked in, and everything was frozen fast. You bring the evidence. She is explaining later. She's explaining later. If we had a country that actually works, and if we are interested in stopping corruption, this is something that should actually have been done.
So you're saying
there is a lack of political will in the fight against corruption, which is why, Jeff, there is only one political formation, one political aspirant who is actually talking about jailing the corrupt. The other side are telling us that, in fact, we can have a summit with these corrupt people and plead with them to stop their errant ways and give us back some of the things that they have stolen, and then we can discuss an amnesty for them. These are the choices that are facing Kenyans in 2022, because even if you were to conduct a random poll here, Jeff, and ask your viewers if they are into giving an amnesty to the people who have caused all the problems. The reason we don't have functional hospitals, right? Why we don't have drugs in hospitals, why we don't have proper roads and all these things that are supposed to come to us by virtue of the taxes that we pay, is because a few people have their hands in the till. Then you are telling us, when we say we will jail the corrupt, they say, stop threatening us. We didn't mention anybody's name, but immediately you know what they say about old people and bones.
At the end of the day, how is it going to change? Like for you, instance, you're running from MP to senator now of Nandi County. How is that going to change things? And you know, you can convince people all day long till the cows come home. How are you going to convince people who have this attitude that there's no political will to deal with things as simple as corruption?
No, first of all, I will agree on that there is no political will. I do feel that people should be a bit more serious about corruption. We have done a lot as a country to try and put in place laws, to try and put in place officials who are charged with this task, and we have tried really hard. And Kenyans would like to see this problem addressed. I agree that we have sometimes felt that the problem is either these particular individuals who are given these offices and who are tasked with this either do not want to or do not seem to have the political muscle to do so. And that is something that should be addressed, and it's something which is unfortunate. However, that point is completely separate from what I was saying earlier, of which I find unfortunate, where certain people like himself just decide to cast aspersions on other people's characters, and they just do so randomly and continuously without any backing it with anything. So that is one separate issue, because you should actually prosecute and pursue corrupt activities everywhere, and that is something that we all can agree on. But I do not agree on just randomly accusing people of wrongdoing without having anything that you're backing it up. So that is one of the things that I do not agree with. But on terms of fighting corruption, completely agree. In terms of what you mentioned about the Senate on a wider thing, I mean, what we would like to see as we move forward from this year, is a focus on the economy. It has been sorely lacking in the past. We have, from our end, our party, we have been trying to make the focus about the economy, about trying to create jobs and about trying to create a different people's lives. That is one of the things that we want to make sure we do. We have to also do that in a way that we bring down the debts, which is another big issue that I have many times tried to articulate. And if we do this in combination, then we should be able to move forward and we have a bright future. But if we keep going on and on this unnecessarily personal attacks or antagonistic things, then that is where the danger is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, interesting to say that we should make the conversation about the economy and reducing debt. But I would really invite the UDA guys to be able to have a conversation with us about the relationship between a poor economy or a bad economy and corruption. We have had, in shock, for instance, the leader of UDA saying that corruption cannot stop development. I mean, those two things are mutually exclusive, Jeff. He said it on national TV. In fact, it was this station that was interviewing him. There is a direct correlation between corruption and development. Because, and I've given this example before, and I wish I could be able to persuade my brother that, you know, he said that we should try and build consensus. There are some things that are just not rocket science that we should all agree upon. That corruption is evil and it is killing us as a society, it is killing us as a country. If, for instance, Jeff, you wanted to help the young people in Elgeyo Marakwet, you have a government project to build a dam. You build the dam. Then you come and do a harambe for the local youth there to buy fishing boats, to buy fishing gear, to buy boats for them to be able to do tourism on a lake that actually exists from the dam that you built. Nobody will see any problem in that. But for you to steal the entire dam, it is not there. There is no water, there is no dam, there is no nothing. And then now you come to do a harambe for those boys in Elgeyo Marakwet to buy borders. It is an insult to us. It is an insult to us. As young people, it's an insult. What we need to do is to agree that we cannot continue on the trajectory that we are doing, that we are on. That in fact, if we don't stem this culture of corruption, there is nothing we will ever do. You are eating everything. You are like termites. At the end of the day, if we release termites in this studio, if you came back after 3 years, would there be a studio, Jeff? You cannot tell us that you can continue to build a country with the sort of thieving that is going on. Yeah. When you talk about debt, Jeff, there was a very serious question that was raised by the Auditor General that we went to borrow $2 billion of the Eurobond and that he could not trace where these funds were going. Just imagine 2 billion shillings. $2 billion US disappeared. And yet an auditor cannot trace the specific projects to which it went. We as Kenyans, together with our children and the generations to come, have to pay this debt.
By the way, your party was very vocal about
correct.
that.
Absolutely.
Actually, Jeff,
very silent.
No, Jeff, I will say this because on that issue of the debt, I actually had initially proposed legislation to try and create a ceiling on debt. That ceiling, I proposed it in 2018. In 2019, the Treasury came forward with another proposal, which was to increase a ceiling and have it at 9 trillion. In the parliamentary debate that happened in 2019, the only reason why that figure was passed, a much higher figure than what we had all initially hoped for, because at that time our debt was about 4 trillion. The only reason why it was passed was because of the votes of ODM MPs who ganged up and supported this agenda. And for us who are, and I am a Jubilee MP, so I, along with other people who are in Jubilee, who are completely opposed to that, despite the fact that we were in Jubilee. And we would have actually carried the day had this orders from above, which is the party leader, the former prime minister, together with the ODM party that you're there, had they not marshaled up their MPs to support the ceiling. So it was one of the biggest tragedies that took place then. It's something which personally I'm very disappointed that happened. I wish it had not happened that way. And that is why when now I listen to them talking about what they want to do about the economy, what they want to do about the changes, I find it very rich that they should talk like that now. Yet part of the reason why we're in the problem that we are in is because of their votes.
No, you should.
But by the way, our debt now is what, 11, 12 trillion?
No. It's about 8 trillion. It's projected to hit that ceiling of 9 trillion next year.
Jeff, you should.
I mean, sorry, this year. We're already in 2022.
You cannot say that a motion by Parliament to increase the debt ceiling is the reason we are in the position we are in. We are increasing the debt ceiling because we have hit the ceiling that was there. How did we get to the ceiling that required then we raise the ceiling? That is the question we're asking. Look, and by the way, debt...
There was no ceiling in 2019.
The debt in itself is not a problem. All countries take debts. In the US, every time 3 months you hear they're putting forward a motion in Congress to raise the debt ceiling. The question is, Jeff, and this is a discussion that the UDA people are not going to run away from. What did we do with the money that we borrowed? That's all we want to know. So what is the explanation, for instance, to build a railway at 4 times the cost of the money, the cost of a project that Dar es Salaam is paying? What is the explanation? That is the question. This is the discussion that
I completely agree with that the railway was...
Just a minute. It is an example. You don't have to engage every example. I'm just saying, can we engage the place of corruption in development of a country and the role of your party and your leadership in bringing us where we are? That is all we are saying.
Go on, Mahesh.
No, I completely agree. I mean, the railway itself was about 400 billion. If you look at a lot of other development projects that have taken place, even this expressway, which although is being built differently, that's about 80 billion. Even if you add all of these figures, they are less than 1 trillion. And yet the increase in debt that we have had from 2013 to date has been about 7-8 trillion by the time that we finish. So you have to ask yourself, what has happened with all this money? A lot of it, I agree, has been lost through corruption. You asked me to join you in accepting or having a consensus of that fighting corruption is bad. I wholeheartedly join you in that consensus that corruption should be fought because that money has been lost through either corruption or wastage. And on that point, I completely agree. It should be tackled differently. But at the end of the day, we are where we are. We are now trying to move forward. As we move forward, we, as the UDA party, have the old ones who have actually talked and made the economy and focusing on dealing with the problem of the economy front and center of our agenda.
What have you
Before we were talking about the economy, for a very long time, those on their side had been talking about constitutional changes and BBI and other changes that we were saying at the time were not going to address the key issue, which is the economy. And it's only recently, when after the BBI appeal failed and everything, that we have seen them, and we welcome that, we have seen them actually trying to now talk about the economy. Because it's only by addressing this issue of the economy, to see how you can bring down the expenditure, reduce wastage, and address corruption, that we will finally be able to manage our economy.
I am interested on the UDA position on corruption. What have you proposed to do about it?
Look, ultimately, it is about getting political goodwill and making sure that the people in office do their jobs. Because in terms of proposing legislation, the legislation exists. In terms of giving resources, they are very well funded and resources are there. In terms of assisting them and giving them support, I have sat in Parliament all this time. I cannot think of any time when any MP or any committee of the House has failed to give every support that has been requested of them by any of these agencies that are tasked with these responsibilities. So on that issue, that is there. What we just need to do is to hope and pray that after the election, we have goodwill and we try and empower them and allow them to do their jobs.
Okay. I asked SG before how old he was. How old are you?
39.
Wow. You're about the same age.
Yes.
You know, they may disagree on a lot of things, but they do agree on one thing. Corruption is the big C in Kenya, the big cancer. Let's take a break, gentlemen. Come back. And I'm going to ask you, what's your party going to be looking for in a running mate? It's very important. A lot of people are asking, what are they going to be looking for in a running mate? And also, going forward, the future of this country. Is there hope? Look, you guys are both under 40. You're literally under 40. You are the future. We're talking to some really smart, brilliant young leaders of tomorrow and today, of course. ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna. By the way, there was a Sifuna back in the day. Any relation in government?
Yeah, he's my uncle. He was a member of parliament for Bumola and
Lawrence Sifuna.
Yes.
Well done.
He's watching someone, I'm sure. Say hi.
Good stuff. And of course, Henry Koskei's son.
My founding chairman.
Is that's right?
He's the chairman of ODM.
Yes. What is he up to now?
I'm sure he's watching.
Good answer. Good answer. And keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff at Citizen TV Kenya. The hashtag JKLIVE. JKLIVE takes a break. We'll come back and also we'll go to the magic wall. Get your reaction. What do you think about the leaders?